All right, welcome everybody to our March Homes for All Indy Coalition meeting. Glad you could make it. And just to go over kind of our agenda tonight, and we're going to try and get everyone out by 7 o'clock so everyone can enjoy your evenings. So the agenda, we just did our check-in. We're going to do a report back from our visit to New Orleans. A bunch of our crew, Emotep Pambana, myself, and Mrs. Fair, who's joining shortly. She said she was making some tea.
Well, she's got a scheduling conflict
Okay.
between this space and 38th Street.
Okay.
Josh, and I'm just curious, what would you recommend when I call her back?
Okay. It doesn't matter either way.
Thank you. Said it out loud. I'll tell her that.
Okay. So, and we all went to New Orleans to the All-Member Assembly of Right to the City, which is a national alliance of about 80 organizations around the country that work for housing justice. So different groups that do tenant unions, community land trusts, and other kind of work like that. And then we're gonna we'll have a little discussion and like group activity to brainstorm a discussion about the role of members of the Community Land Trust for Indianapolis, and also how do we build reciprocal relationships between the organization and the people who are part of it, as well as the role of advocacy for local policies that promote housing justice. Things like tenant rights or right to counsel for tenants facing eviction, et cetera. And then if anyone, I think Patricia helped organize the conference that we went to last week, the Grassroots Community Housing Conference. So we'd love to hear report backs from anyone who attended, including Patricia. And we had a couple people in the room, Alicia and Aprilli too. So, and that's it. So we'll go ahead and kick it off. Who wants to start for our group on New Orleans?
Why don't you go first, Al, and then we can just fill in the blanks.
Okay, sounds good. So Kepler has been a part of Right to the City for about since like 2018, I think. 2018, 2019 is when we joined. And again, that's kind of really how we got started on the housing justice and community land trust kind of work that we've been doing. And again, like a lot of Kepler's projects, it came from friends of ours in community. So in this case, Andy Beck and Wildstyle, who came to Kepra and just was like, hey, there's this group that does tenants' rights and they do community control of land and housing through community land trust. We think y'all should, is cool, and I think you all should join. So we talked to some of the leadership of Right to the City, and that's how we eventually ended up starting this Homes for All Indy coalition. And yeah, 4 years later, we're still figuring it out and doing it. And I would say like, again, like there's two parts they do like around like tenant rights, as well as like how do we own the land ourselves as community and build infrastructure in our communities and organizations to do that. The all-member assembly, it had, and I'll try and paint a picture. I've got a couple of photos I can show just to give you an idea of what it was like. There was about 400 some folks, and it was at a hotel in New Orleans. It was hosted, the host organization was Jane's Place Neighborhood Initiative, which is both a community land trust, and they do a renters assembly where they organize for renters' rights in New Orleans. So they do both advocacy as well as a community land trust. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick so you can see a few pictures. Okay, and here's a couple pictures. So there was a bunch of people, like giant ballroom of people, sessions on like strategy, sharing and like building relationships between people. And I would say like when I first got there, I was like, there are so many people. How are we going to talk to everybody? And then I was like, eventually was like, we're not going to talk to everybody. Like, and that's probably for the best. So like for us, we just kind of like vibed and like, okay, whoever we sit next to is who we should talk to. And then, yeah, just built a lot of really cool connections with folks. And I'll just pull out like a couple of the people that we met that I think were meaningful, as well as some of the way that it impacted, like at least like impacted me and things that I've been thinking about and that we've been thinking about. So like a big part of it was a reminder about the role that particularly like the first, and I'll give a little context for those who don't know, the first community land trust was created by New Communities Inc. in Albany, Georgia in the 1960s as part of the civil rights movement, and was really created by some members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee as they were working with farmers to exercise their right to vote, those same farmers were sharecroppers and didn't own the land that they farmed on and lived on. So some of them would be kicked out for exercising their civil rights. So they were like, this isn't right. And it's challenging, like, how do we create our own solution to this issue of not having ownership and control of land? So they raised some funds and were able to buy about 7,000 some acres to start the country's first community land trust. It was really based off of some models that they studied in Israel and other places around collective and community ownership of land. And I'll just read this like one section from an article that this article I sent out earlier, that Black Power organizers in Albany were motivated by the goals of community control social change borrow from different land reform movements to create the first CLT. They did so not as a tool for affordable housing, but rather, as the CLT's founders put it, so that, quote, a legitimate alternative institutional expression of land ownership may be found, thereby contributing to the much needed social and economic reconstruction of America. So, and again, really, like, I think some of the buzz around an interest in community land trusts recently has been with the increasing housing costs and people looking for solutions. And while CLTs are a tool to do permanently affordable housing, there is also the potential, and really the original intention was really around self-reliance, self-determination, and the empowerment of Black communities in the South and et cetera. So I think like that reminder, and really like that's really some of the vibes and energy that I got in the space, was not just about how do we carve out like a small amount of like houses and land so that a certain amount of people can live on them, but how do we face the brutal facts of the serious, like, huge problem that we're in, which is really around capital and how a small number of people own most of the land and housing. So that, again, like I mentioned, some of the people we met, Jane's Place Neighborhood Initiative, which both does like these small rentals, like affordable rentals, and they advocate for renters' rights, because that the idea, I think they're looking at not just housing justice for the folks who are part of the community land trust, but how do we use that as a base to then influence and change the policies around their city that will then impact more people and really make housing justice more real for a lot more people. A couple other folks that I met, and I'll play this video a little later, was the Roberto from Video, and actually I'll share my screen again so you can see it. Roberto, who's like the director of the Fideicomiso Comunitario Tierra Libre that's in Southeast Los Angeles. And I think like a big part, and we'll watch a short video in a little bit about kind of their work, is they really focus on membership and relationship building. So like that's like their thing. They are like, okay, the third Tuesdays we're having member meetings, we're going to do movie nights, we're going to get to know each other, and really both the affordable housing part's a part of it, but a large part is about the community control and decision making on the lots, vacant lots that are in their neighborhood, and how do we want to use the land in our community to uplift our community. And that's it. I'll go ahead and pass it to Ms. Pambana.
So, in addition to what Alvin added, I guess I'll just say that one, like, and then I'll see if I can show y'all this picture. It was about, they said, I think 400 people there. Let me see if I can get to that. Okay. I do screen share. And for me, one of the things that I found to be very impressive, where's screen share at? Right here. Screen share. Okay. So can everybody see the picture? And so this is kind of the picture that they took at the end of all the people who were there, and the Right to the City banner. And we weren't even in it because we had to leave to go catch our plane. But one, I guess I would say, was that, was definitely individuals who live in their communities, who are passionate about, community having what they need to be able to thrive, and housing being a big part of that. But, also looking at other things that impacted now too, like, Right to the City is having conversations about land. And then and then doing housing as cooperatives and as single family. And then one of the things that came up while we were there, I get out of stop share, was around now some of the communities are now working with mobile home parks to help them, acquire the land and own their homes and things like that. So to me, was really kind of like looking at and they Right to the City started in 2012, I think it was. And now, so it's like 2024, 12 years later, looking at their growth, and them bringing everybody together to try to think about, what's the next level? How do we maximize our power? What are the strategies or things we should be working on? And we have to decide this together. So they spend a lot of time on this issue about the mobile home parks, and they don't like move and by vote. They do consensus. And so, like if somebody says stop, then they take the time to work through and try to figure out and hear from those individuals, what are the issues, what needs to be worked on, what needs to be clarified, so that they can get to consensus. So I felt that was all very powerful. And to me, just because they are across the nation, beautiful to see how they bring everybody together and how they're trying to work and try to work collectively to maximize power so that we can have greater impact. And then what's next in the context of where we want to go. So the thing about Homes for All, I mean, truly right now, I think predominantly it's been tenant organizing, and it's been single family homes. But now, like they're looking at mobile parks, and then, I don't know what the issues are in rural areas. And then it could be eventually homeless people in what do they call them, encampments and all those kind of things. But housing for all, whatever the different variations are, Home for All trying to struggle with that and try to look at how to be most strategic, how to maximize power, and how to bring about, their vision of housing being a human right, not a commodity where people, just can charge whatever they want, and people have to struggle and have to make choices between, whether they eat or whether they pay their rent or whether they pay their utilities and things like that. And most of them are like in their late 30s, kind of early 40s, young people who are passionate about this and working on it. So it was really beautiful to see. And they put a lot of intentionality into the assembly, and they, clarify assembly is like, it's not a conference where you come in and sit and have workshops. It's assembly where you come to talk about, what we've done, where we're at, where we want to go, and make decisions about what our next strategy should be. And so I guess I'll say that, and they also are very holistic. They incorporated culture, health, and wellness activities. They had multi languages. They translated the presentations in English, Cantonese, and Spanish. So I mean, it was just really, to me, powerful to see these young people, trying to leaning into living their vision, and trying to bring us all together, regardless of kind of language and our different communities, to figure out how we can bring this about. So I'll pass it over to Ian.
Highlight was the food. I ate good food every day. It was great. The gumbo was off the chain. So that was a highlight. I was there because I was really support for Alvin and Paulette. Alvin was working with Alvin pre the assembly and some spaces he was involved in, and just trying to make sure that I could continue to support his leadership development in this particular space. Paulette, I had encouraged Paulette to join the policy committee, and she was reluctant at first. And really, I was just looking for a way to encourage Paula to take all that wisdom and knowledge, experience, and find some spaces, not just to do the work, but to share the work with others. So that was why I was on the trip. What did I learn? What I discovered? Ditto what else been shared by Pambana and Alvin. And for me, right now I'm really studying the what I'll call the environmental landscape, global and local, in all the spaces I find myself. So this is a great opportunity to kind of look at that from folks from around the country, working specifically in housing through a particular organizing model that they use, or a rubric they use, and just studying and looking at it and see what aspect of what's going on in that space can we can utilize in our space, and two, what is it that we're being called to do in that space and others. So this is the second organization, national organization, of cohorts that Kepler's involved in, the Climate Justice Alliance and Rights to the City. And in fact, while we were there, folks that came to our convening from was it October? August of the past year, for Climate Justice Alliance, were also at Rights to the City. So just kind of look, that's kind of what I was trying to do and intending to do while I was there. I think Pambana already mentioned their approach to decision-making, consensus, and really trying to figure out how to do that well. So that was also just appreciative of being in a space where people are trying to do things differently, but enough grace to know that mistakes are going to be made as we try to figure out, what's next. I think that's pretty much it. Try to keep Alvin from killing himself while I was there. That was a full-time job.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Awesome. So we'll open it up. Any questions? And then we also want to make sure we have enough time to do our discussion and activities coming up. So a couple questions, if you got them.
I did have a question. You were, Imhotep, you were referring to an event in August last year. Where was that located?
It was at our Octavius Visionary Campus here in Indianapolis. We hosted the Climate Justice Alliance
member convening.
How many people have? 400?
I think 300.
300 people on our campus, and it was a great experience. It was a lot of lessons learned. We learned, and others learned about us. So that was here in Indianapolis at our campus.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question in the comment section.
Yeah. So Patricia asked, I was wondering if you could talk more about the process of assembly and consensus. Go ahead, Patricia. Did you want to add anything?
No, that was it. If no one else has another question.
Yeah. So there were like different proposals that they had sent out ahead of time and then we were all in a delegation. So each quote delegation or organization that's part of Right to the City had one vote. And really, it's like not necessarily a yes, no vote, but they use a process called green, yellow, red. Green is like, hey, I'm in agreement with this. Let's move it forward. And then yellow is, I'm in agreement with moving this forward, but I have some like questions or comments or thoughts on how we might tweak this or clarify some things. And then red is more of like a blocking, like, hey, we should stop and pause and discuss before we decide to move forward externally. So that's kind of the system that they use, and everyone had cards and they're going around like tallying votes, and like it was like a forum, kind of like a political forum where in particular they had mics all around the room, and they would like particularly invite folks who were yellow or red to come and share what some of their questions or particular concerns were, as well as the folks who voted green and why, and then like have space for people to like think about it. And then there was like particularly like one proposal where there was definitely like, we didn't resolve it while we were there. They were like, hey, and it was because the emotions got kind of like high in the room when we were talking about it. And it was like the Right to the City, like staff people were facilitating, I think, did a really good job of like practicing saying, hey, these are the things that we heard. And we're not going to be able to necessarily resolve them here, but continue to stay engaged in these different community committees that are moving it forward and kind of playing back what people were feeling. So that's kind of the general technique that people use.
So what I took away from that was when the skinny version, if there's any reds, we can't move forward. And when it started, there were 3 reds. And then after more dialogue and more discussion, it went from 3 reds to 6 reds.
Yeah.
And you know, it was really, for me, just appreciative of their efforts to make that model work. Now, is that a model that I would probably embrace? Probably not. You know, it's not my flavor to have 100% consensus to move forward. But I just really was impressed with the effort to commit to, here's our design, here's how we're going to figure out how to make sure people on the ground have voice, and we're not going to move forward until we get that figured out. Now, the had opportunity to talk to some of the leadership post that, and you could feel the level of disappointment they were having with it being stuck, but still willing to try to figure it out going forward. And that's what I took away more than anything else, just that passion for trying to improve on the approach for making sure that community has voice. And that's just something you don't experience every day.
Awesome. Thanks for those questions. And Alicia asked a question about what are the things we should focus on as a group to move things forward? And I think that lends well to our next activity and discussion, which is a little bit about the role of membership. So I'm going to actually go ahead and try something new. We are going to pull up a whiteboard on Zoom. If you've never used that before, you can like actually add little note cards to it. And you're going to have edit access. So feel free to like add your own comments to the different questions that we have on here, or you can say them out loud and I'll do my best to scribe and whiteboard it. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. Collaborating. Okay, everyone should see a whiteboard now. So you can right click and hold to scroll around the board. There's like a zoom in and zoom out. And on the left-hand bar, there's a bunch of tools. And if you click the tool that says it's got like a circle and a square in it, it'll allow you to create a box that you can type in. So feel free, if you want to add your comments or stuff as we're going through these activities and questions and discussions, feel free to do so, or I'll do my best to try and capture it as well. So if you see the section that says Indy CLT Roadmap of Priorities for 2024, it's right under there that we're going to be looking at. So there's a purple box that says Deep Dive on the Role of Membership and Centering Relationships in the CLT Project. So like I said, a big takeaway from us was about this is really about providing an organization, an institution that community can have control over and also help drive the direction. So Community Land Trust, including the Indianapolis Community Land Trust, is a membership. It's going to be a membership-based organization. What does that mean? So that means that there are people who can, so anyone who lives in Indianapolis, and we also basically in our tentative bylaws, and that also makes under 80% of the area median income, can be a member, general member of the Indianapolis Community Land Trust. So that means that you can be nominated to serve on the board. You can vote. There's an annual meeting every year to vote in the board members. And the board is a tripartite board. So 1/3, once there are CLT residents, 1/3 will be residents, 1/3 will be general members, and 1/3 will be kind of at-large members who might be like partners or government or lawyers or anyone who really supports the CLT project that might add value to the board. So that is going to happen tentatively for June of this year. So really in the next couple of months, we want to get ideas from you all on what the role of the membership would be. So both the role as well as, and again, question on what does reciprocity look like at different levels of membership. So here you see CLT residents, you see general members and supporting members. And I would say one of the other takeaways is we don't want necessarily the community land trust to be another social service organization that provides housing. We really want it to be a project where people come together, people put in who are a part of it, and they get out too. So it's about kind of a mutual reciprocal relationship. And just like, for instance, I'll give an example of one of the people we talked to in New Orleans was Kayla, who works with the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center in Austin, Texas. And they've started a community land trust like that focuses on only people under 30% of the area median income. So like that's very like for like affordable housing, that's relatively very low income, but people also have to put in too. So if you're a roofer, hey, can you help us do roofing or other kind of volunteer work? And that's like Habitat does a somewhat similar model where they have sweat equity that people put in. So again, like that's kind of the question we would love to hear y'all's thoughts on. How do we create reciprocal relationships where people who are part of the organization, either as CLT residents or as general members or as supporting members? So again, supporting members might not be lower income like we have for our general membership, but they might also want to support either through resources or volunteering or other ways that they can support the organization. So I'm going to open it up. People can just start adding notes into the whiteboard, or you can unmute and share your thoughts.
So yeah, for me, Alvin, I would definitely think that there would have to be some type of process for the individuals that you serve, a process that will allow them to obtain your ultimate goals. I believe if you set up some processes that make sure they obtain, and you make sure that there's staff or adequate volunteers to be able to walk them through that process, where you use your own community of practice, which is exactly what the Kepler Institute has set up through the Community Land Trust. Use your own community of practice with your own knowledge translation, or basically it's the verbiage that you use to accomplish your missions through the community land trust through Kepler. So it's like putting together a system that your clients will be able to obtain. They will basically be able to come back and to help Kepler grow, influence, and market and brand out Kepler and the community land trust with the services that you provide. So they'll be able to come back and return and work, or go out and basically change the economy. And I think that's kind of like the ultimate goal of what we're trying to do anyways, is create self-sufficiency for these families and make it like a community endeavor. Am I right? Or
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
okay.
And do you want to, if you want to share anything that you found to be like effective in your work, we would appreciate that too. If you want to add
Right.
it.
I just shared a big one. I just shared a big one. We use process, what we call process programs. But if you look at the federal system with their funding and how they use the knowledge the terminology is through what they call community of practices. It's exactly what Kepler has established by having all the meetings, by bringing people into the meetings to understand that there's an overall mission. This is by book studies. All of that is a community of practice that you are utilizing to say, hey, this is our focus. This is what we're aligning our narratives to. This is what the goal is. This is how we're going to learn about our KPIs. All of that is kind of set in structure. So I would definitely use your community of practice, and it might be termed differently, but it's the same thing. So when you tap into those resources of being able to provide those mental health services or the housing initiatives, those are the terminologies that will get it funded. Those are the terminologies that will keep the clients basically coming through the door. Even as one grows, if they move out or become self-sufficient, you'll still have that same process to use over and over again. And so it has that reciprocal effect of reaching those families or those volunteers or those staff members. Everybody's on kind of like the same page, and you do it exactly how you've been doing it, Alvin. And that's kind of through the meetings and the book studies that you've been having, the informations, and you're just doing your checks and balances, making sure those risk assessments are there, and just kind of creating that community with the people that you work with on a consistent basis. When we talk about the knowledge translations, that is pretty much the verbiage that you're using to get the information out to the funders, the sponsors, the volunteers, the employees. That's all your terminology. But again, it's aligned to the federal terminology and some of the state that is funding the specifics of what you're doing.
Awesome. That's great, Alicia. Appreciate it. Communities of practice. That's what I'm putting on
Yes.
here with some detail.
community of practice, and knowledge translations. So they see lowercase o, capital P, and then also K, capital K, and capital T. And those are the acronyms. So if you guys haven't noticed, a lot of the terminology when it comes to grant funding and creating partnerships are changing. And it's all a part of the federal system that's coming in, that's ushering this big mental health mandate that has just launched in 2022, I believe it was, but pretty much came to mandate January 1st of 2024. And so I'm kind of giving y'all a crash course of what's out there and what's available. This is kind of like the field that what I kind of throw myself in with the codes that really govern the federal and state.
I love the
information.
crash course. Thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated, Alicia. It was awesome.
No problem.
All right. Anyone else want to step in? Just throw out some ideas. Also throw in the other question. Oh, go ahead, Lauren.
I was going to ask a question and then
Yeah.
make a suggestion. As far as the different thirds of the membership, has anyone talked about overlap of the three types of membership? Like, could a CLT resident also be a supporting member? Could a general member also be a CLT resident? And what that distinction looks like. Is it necessary to separate them, or if there's a separate onboarding process for that type of membership, will they have to do each one of those? Or do they fill out one general form and then choose which level of membership they're going to participate in? And then I know that this group has done a book study. And I think that should be an ongoing thing as a part of any of the memberships, is just continuing to learn and grow together in that way. So maybe having the book club or a group of reading as part of the membership as well. Just another way to engage people.
That's great. Thank you.
I'm not gonna type on the whiteboard, Alvin, but I'm gonna say that, for me, when you talk about centering relationships and community, I think, if first the membership and the people who live on the CLT, there should be, I guess, you kind of ongoing conversation about what does community mean to them and what would they like to see, and how can they be involved in the, I guess, creating and maintaining those relationships to make them feel like it's a community. So, that's my thought about it, because it could be a number of different things, like, when people need repairs, getting together to help them do it, or communal gatherings just to, like celebrate spring and everybody bring a pitch in and come out and get to know each other. Or it could be some other things, but it'd be interesting to hear from people, what they feel makes community and what they'd like to see and how they'd like to be involved in bringing that about.
And I would just add to what Pamela just said, how do you build community? What are the techniques and tools you use to build community and to build relationships?
And that is the next question. What activities do we engage in to build these relationships?
Well, look at that. I'm psychic.
Yeah. Working. And I did hear also some of the things Miss Mabana mentioned, I think answer some of that. Also, what Lauren said about the book studies and learning together, I think is a really good one too.
And I think what you call a builds community, which we've demonstrated, not that everybody would want to do it, but gardening or other kinds of like skills transference, those kind of things build community too.
One of the things we're doing now that might be a possibility is Mimi's leading up a monthly happy birthday gathering for folks in the Kepler team. So something along that lines, at least highlight, if not gatherings, at least highlighting and recognizing, things that are important to human beings.
And Malali has her hand up.
Oh, please, go ahead, Malali. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say one thing that um has come around a lot, and we've been seeing more of them in not just in our our work with the USDA, but just across the board, even with fundraising and grant making, is cooperative agreements. And it's really like ensuring that built in from the beginning, that there is robust partnerships and robust participation from community, and having that cooperative agreement that says this is what we want to see to move forward. So in addition to the consensus making that you learned about and that you practiced, it's who all has to be at the table, who all needs to be a part of this community, this cooperative agreement, that all works together. And that just helps to ensure that everyone is always at the table, all the
Right.
time, and that everything is just centered and rooted in that open, transparent communication and involvement.
Malay, that's a great point. I want to ask a question here for clarity. How do you see that different from maybe what we often would call MOUs?
So it really, from the beginning, your project, it would be based around this cooperative agreement. It would almost be everyone signs on. So almost like having bylaws within an organization, in a way, but really just establishing all of the partners, all of the roles, and then and making sure that if you're doing MOUs or if you're doing agreements, that everyone understands not just what their role is and the expectation is for their participation, but then what collectively everyone has agreed to do, so that you've got the same vision, the same mission, and you're all working towards that.
And that's helpful too, because then you
Yeah,
can have a
thank you.
certain amount of accountability.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malali. That was great.
Just following up on Malali, I thought that was really cool. It's something that I do in classrooms with students, is thinking about community agreements and how we connect with each other, um, how to be there for each other and be in relationship. And I wrote some stuff in the chat that you can copy and paste later,
Okay,
Alvin,
thank you.
about thinking about creating community or making community. I think it's it's an ongoing process. So all of the things that you all are saying are part of that process, like of organizing and making community, making and sharing food, celebrating achievements, and showing up for each other in times of difficulty, things like that. That, I mean, a lot of that I already see kind of Kepra or Homes for All doing, right? Creating spaces for sharing, for learning, for listening.
Hey, Patricia, did you put those particular points in the chat?
I did, yes.
Great, thank you. Those are good
Thank
points.
you.
I want to say, how are we about finding, strategizing how we are including foundations and grant makers into the overall partnership to help sustain the efforts of what we're doing? I know right now there are just in Chicago, Illinois, and Indiana alone, we have over almost 1,800 foundations and grant making organizations that we can actually tap into to see if they can help support the initiatives. And whether that being the willingness to fund other initiatives, such as the ones that Kepra or the Community Land Trust has going on, or maybe that's starting a new initiative, or do they have a partnership roundtable meeting to establish that talk, to have transparency and engagement to be able to do that? Or what about what is their motive for giving to our partners, for them to actually participate in what we're doing and form those partnerships. What does that look like? So we can kind of meet that demand and do a consistent follow-up on all of that. So we can kind of be on that deadline. So if they're making new grants, what about if they're making new grants based on things that we're already doing? We kind of need to be aligned with what their missions is and them bringing new people into the forefront so we can kind of establish that partnership and that network with them so we can be receivers of that funding and be able to sparingly spend it or put it in the places that we know we need to establish the community land trust to be able to meet those goals, to be able to, you know, get where we need to go. Does that make sense? And I'll write that in the text too, in the chat.
Oh, sorry, real quick. Someone keeps closing the whiteboard. So whoever was
Uh-oh.
closing it the last few times, it closes it for the whole group. Just heads up.
Oh, Alvin, I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
It reminds me of Boondocks. Santa, you gotta pay what you owe.
Also, Malele, or not Malele, Olenike put some things in the chat because she's not able to speak right now from where she's at. I just
Hey, Alvin, when the meeting's over, I'm gonna come over and read the notes to me.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank
And
you
thank
so
you.
much.
This is all really great stuff, y'all. And we are getting close to time. So I will open it up for the next question we would love your feedback on, which is what is the role of advocacy for housing justice in the CLT work?
Say it again.
What is the role of advocacy for housing justice in the CLT work? And I gave the example of Jane's Place as one example of an organization that does it, that has both housing for residents as well as advocates for things like right to counsel for all tenants who are facing eviction, which I guess like how, because and it also goes back to the article that I read from and sent out earlier, which talks just that the political power of CLTs is also in getting people to organize and work together, which again could be done to both take ownership of land and housing, but also could be done to influence policy locally.
So for clarity, the question is really about how to influence policy.
Yeah, and what role do you see
What-
the CLT having in that?
What role does CLT have in
influencing
influencing policy?
Yeah, or should we have? Because it really is up to us to decide
policy.
what that should look like.
I'm gonna say, well, should we have? I'll say it's definitely needed, but I think that to me, I feel like the first priority is working with the members of the people who are in the CLT and maybe others to decide what it is that they want to see change and what kind of and then if they have the passion or to work on that in terms of policy. So for me, any policy should come from the people. And then once that's determined, then you can look at, do you have the capacity or are there others out there that you can partner with to do that? But I would say it's definitely needed, but you know, when does it become a priority? I think is after you've had a chance to talk with and work with members of the CLT and community to hear from them what they'd like to see change.
And I feel the same way. If people come to the CLT, like these meetings, say, hey, look, I am passionate about policy. I want to be involved in that. And of course, it's important. So we build that into the space, but it does need to be driven, dare I say, from the bottom up. People have to decide it's just where they want to place their emphasis and time. Now, I'll say my opinions for later about impact. Alvin for governor.
Oh God, I don't think that's going to happen. I could run. I don't think I
Got
could
my
win.
vote.
No.
Got my vote.
Well, that's one. Oh my God.
I'll say something really quick. That's something I've been thinking a lot about in terms of, I think creating communities is also about creating collective consciousness and agency.
Mhm.
And that has a lot to do with like what to do, like should we influence policy? Like it's being able to understand ourselves as part of a collective that can actually do that.
Right.
It's an important process and something that like in some spaces that doesn't exist, right? People don't see themselves as part of a collective.
Mhm. I agree. Now, it was kind of what I was thinking about too, about collective agency and self-determination and those types of things,
Mhm.
yeah.
Thanks, Patricia. That's great.
Hey, Patricia, you handled that conference like a champion, by the way.
What?
You handled that
Conference.
conference like a champion.
Oh, talking about
Oh,
the.
thank you.
She didn't get to share on that. Maybe that's next
So,
time. You didn't
why
talk
don't
about.
we, so we could also stop here and give a few minutes. People want to stay on
Mhm.
for Patricia to share a little bit about the conference.
So thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Hey, I'm serious.
You all were there too. You all can share.
Well, I had fun watching Alvin preach to the choir. It was and it was an important piece of inspiration that got us out of the weeds, and to have the baby at 36 years old step to the microphone and said, "This is about more than the mechanics of the CLT." Was that was a highlight for me.
And can you tell everybody what you're talking about? Where did you
Alvin,
go?
will you tell us more about the conference, please?
So it was about 80 folks, 80 to 100, some folks who came together. It was last Friday at State Farm Building. It was put on by Patricia, as well as the Cooperative Development Center, some folks out of Bloomington, Center for Real Engagement, as well as Bloomington Cooperative Living. And there were different sessions, both like panel discussions about success stories, about communities coming together to provide a housing for folks in our community. So it was kind of two focuses. One was cooperatives and the other was community land trusts. And they were just different workshops, and some of them practical. I wasn't there for the afternoons. So I missed those parts around how do you actually do a project? How do you bring it together and actually finance it and manage the construction and stuff like that? And Patricia, go ahead and add in
And
whatever.
I just want to add to that overview that Patricia and Alvin, for me, brought the why and not just the how. They brought some of the how, but most of what they presented for me at that convening was, hey, look, this is why we do this. Very people-centered, very community-oriented, and that's often at these kinds of conferences, it gets lost because we're busy doing the mechanics of the work, which is also important. But you guys really did a great job of keeping it focused on this is why we do it, and this is why we need to do it differently than just transactions. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was the thing that I most appreciated was Alvin's remarks. I think were really important because, like you said, it's very easy during these types of events to just get into the weeds and just see these types of models as providers for affordable housing and forgetting the actual point and role of those things. So, and that's something that I'm always in the back trying to yell. It's like, wait.
Hey, but you did it well at the conference too. I'm just saying, hey, look, while Alvin had the microphone, I just actually watched how you continue to make sure that was present also. You got to receive some of
We're going to Puerto Rico.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And it was exciting to also see the number of people that were there that are interested in these things. So I think there's energy to be mobilized at a state scale.
Yeah, it was renewing.
Awesome. Well, we are at 7:04, so I'll open it up for any last final thoughts or questions people want to add.
Yes, I'm on my way over for Chile.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. Well, thanks y'all for coming out tonight. It was super helpful. We love all this input. It was great. And again, we do this meeting every month. So it's the second Thursday at 6 p.m. on the same Zoom channel. So tell your friends, bring a friend next time, and we'll dig in some more.
Thank you, Alvin. Everybody have a blessed night.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Thank you, Alvin.
Good to see you all.
Thank you all. It's good to see you
Have
all.
a good night.
Good to see
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Everybody be safe.
You too.
Bye.